My name is Lily S. Weathersby. I'm 31 years old, and the moment my engagement ended didn't start with a fight. It started with a sentence that sounded so casual it almost passed as a joke. Adrien said it while we were sitting on the couch, scrolling through our phones like any other quiet Friday night. "Propose again," he said, holding his phone up so I could see the photo on his screen. "But only if the ring is bigger this time, otherwise don't." At first I thought he was kidding. The picture he was showing me was one of his friend's engagement posts, a giant diamond that looked less like jewelry and more like a spotlight attached to someone's finger. The caption underneath it had hundreds of comments already. Hearts, congratulations, a long thread about how lucky she was. I laughed a little because that's what you do when something feels awkward and you want to soften it. "You're joking, right?" I asked. Adrien didn't laugh. He turned to me with that calm, evaluating expression he used whenever he believed he was pointing out something obvious. "Lily," he said almost patiently, "I don't want to look back at my life and feel like I settled. If you really want to marry me, you'll fix this." Fix! That word landed harder than the demand itself. He didn't sound angry. He didn't sound emotional. He sounded instructional, like a manager correcting a mistake during a meeting. For context, Adrien and I had been together 4 years, engaged for 6 months. At least that's what I thought the situation was. The first proposal hadn't been dramatic or viral. No drone footage, no flash mob, no crowd clapping in a restaurant. It was just us on a quiet weekend trip standing near a lake while the sun was starting to set. I had spent months saving for that ring. Not because Adrien asked for something extravagant, but because I wanted the moment to feel meaningful. I remember the jeweler asking my budget and me pretending I was comfortable when I absolutely wasn't. I remember standing there, staring at a glass display case, thinking about our future together, and convincing myself that love was supposed to feel a little terrifying when you commit to it. When I finally proposed, Adrien cried. He whispered, "It's beautiful," and hugged me so tightly I thought my ribs might crack. He posted the engagement within 10 minutes. At the time, I thought that meant he was excited. Turns out that part was the easy part. Back on the couch, Adrien waited for my answer, like he had asked me to adjust the thermostat. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I just nodded once and said, "Understood." He smiled, satisfied, and went back to scrolling through Instagram. He didn't notice the moment something quietly ended between us. The rest of the night continued like nothing had happened. That somehow made it worse. Adrien started talking about brunch plans for the weekend. He complained about a coworker who didn't understand aesthetics. He asked if I thought he should get lip filler again before summer, because apparently that was trending. Every now and then, he glanced down at his hand where the engagement ring sat on his finger like it was already temporary. I nodded at the right moments, made the right noises. Inside, everything had gone very still. When I got home later that night, I didn't sleep. I sat at my kitchen table with the ring box in front of me. I opened it, closed it, opened it again. The memory of buying it replayed itself in small details. The nervous excitement, the quiet pride, the belief that this moment meant something permanent. Now the same ring felt like evidence. The next morning, Adrien texted me before I had even made coffee. "So have you thought about what you're going to do?" "Not we, not us. You." I stared at the message for a long time before replying with a single word, "Yes." He responded immediately with a winking emoji and a link to a jewelry account on Instagram. "This is more my style. Don't disappoint me again." That was the moment the last piece of doubt finally disappeared. I picked up the ring box, slipped it into my jacket pocket, and walked out the door. Because the decision had already been made the night before. Adrien just didn't know it yet. The jewelry store opened at 10. I arrived a few minutes early and sat in my car, watching the storefront lights flicker on one by one. The street was quiet, still shaking off the slow rhythm of a Saturday morning. For a moment, I just sat there with the ring box in my lap, feeling the strange weight of how quickly something permanent can turn into something temporary. 6 months earlier, I had walked into that same store with a completely different feeling. Back then, I had been nervous in the kind of hopeful way people are when they believe they're building a future with someone. I remembered standing in front of the glass display while the salesman asked about my budget. I remembered pretending I was comfortable spending that much, when in reality, I had been calculating every payment in my head. Now I was walking in to undo it. The same salesman recognized me immediately. "Hey," he said with a friendly smile. "Congratulations again. How's the wedding planning going?" I placed the ring box gently on the counter. "It's not," I said. For a moment he looked confused. Then the expression shifted into something more professional. The kind of calm understanding people develop when they work around engagements long enough to know that not all of them end the same way. Returning the ring turned out to be easier than I expected. No dramatic conversation, no interrogation about what went wrong. Just paperwork, a receipt, and a refund processed back to my account. The moment the transaction finished, something inside my chest loosened in a way I hadn't realized I needed. Then I drove across town. 'Cause there was another ring. Adrien had insisted months earlier that we keep a placeholder ring just in case we upgraded later. At the time, I had laughed and assumed he was joking about the idea of needing something temporary. Now the phrase made perfect sense. I returned that one too. By the time I got back to my apartment, both rings were gone and the money had already reappeared in my account. I felt lighter the second I saw the balance update. Then I did the other thing I had already decided the night before. I blocked him. Phone number, Instagram, WhatsApp, everything. No message. No explanation. Just silence. I figured the word understood covered it. 2 days passed before anything happened. Then on the third morning, my phone rang from a number I didn't recognize. I almost ignored it. Instead, I answered. A woman's voice came through the line immediately, shaky and breathless. "Lily, this is Adrien's mother." Before I could even respond, she continued. "What did you do to my son?" I didn't answer right away. Not because I didn't know what to say, because I suddenly understood why she was calling me instead of her son. "I didn't do anything to Adrien," I said carefully. "I just stopped doing what he expected." There was a pause on the other end. I could hear the quiet sound of someone trying to regain control of their breathing. "He says you disappeared," she said finally. "Blocked him everywhere. Returned the rings. He's hysterical. Lily, he hasn't eaten. He says you humiliated him." That word again. Humiliated. Not hurt. Not confused. Humiliated. Like the entire situation was about appearances instead of a relationship. I leaned back in my chair. "Did he tell you what he said to me?" I asked. Silence. Then her voice came back quieter. "He said you misunderstood him." "Of course he did." I explained the conversation calmly. Not dramatically. Just the facts. The photo of the bigger ring. The demand to propose again. The condition attached to love like it was a business transaction that needed revision. I didn't exaggerate. I didn't need to. When I finished, his mother let out a long, shaky breath. "He didn't mention the ring size part. That didn't surprise me either. He said you were pressuring him," she continued slowly, "that you made him feel ungrateful." I almost laughed. But what came out instead was something closer to disbelief. "I spent months saving for that ring," I said. "I proposed because I wanted a marriage. He wanted an upgrade." For a moment she didn't say anything. Then I heard the quiet sound of someone crying. Not loudly, just the kind of tired tears people make when they start realizing the story they've been defending doesn't quite line up anymore. "He told me you'd come around," she said eventually. "He said you always do." That sentence landed harder than anything Adrien had said. Because it was true. I had always come around. I had always adjusted. I had always tried harder. Until I didn't. "I'm not calling to convince you," she added after a moment. "I just needed to understand why he's acting like this is the end of the world." I looked down at the ring receipt still sitting on the table. "For the first time," I said quietly, "someone told him no." We talked for a few minutes after that. When we hung up, I stayed sitting at the table longer than I expected. The strangest realizations settled slowly into place. Adrien wasn't shocked that I left. He was shocked that I didn't negotiate. And something told me he wasn't finished trying to rewrite the story yet. He wasn't finished. The first attempt came by email. Subject line, "We need to talk like adults." I didn't open it. The preview was enough. Words like miscommunication, stress, you took it the wrong way. No apology, no ownership, just the familiar architecture of revision, the version where I was emotional and he was reasonable. A few hours later, he sent a Venmo request for $1. The note said, "Since you won't answer." That almost made me laugh. Not because it was funny, but because it was so completely him. Small manipulations designed to force engagement. Tiny hooks thrown out just to see if I would bite. I declined it without comment and blocked him there too. By that evening, he had moved on to a more visible tactic. My neighbor texted me while I was still at work. "Hey, is the guy with the expensive bag outside your building supposed to be sitting on the stairs crying?" I stared at the message for a moment. Of course, Adrien had chosen the performative version of heartbreak. Not quiet grief, not reflection. A public collapse with an audience built in. I didn't go downstairs. 10 minutes later, his mother called again. "I told him not to go there," she said immediately. "He doesn't listen when he's upset." I leaned against the wall and closed my eyes. He doesn't listen when he's calm either. There was silence on the other end. Not offended silence, just tired agreement. "He says you embarrassed him," she said, "that people are asking questions, that his friends think something is wrong with him." I almost said there is. Instead, I said, what's really upsetting him is that he thought I'd panic and try to prove myself. His mother didn't deny it. He told me you'd buy a bigger ring eventually, she admitted quietly. He said you just needed time. That was the final confirmation I didn't know I still needed. Adrien hadn't seen my proposal as a promise. He had seen it as an opening offer. I'm not fixing this, I said. And I'm not proposing again to anyone, not like that. His mother exhaled slowly. I wish he understood what he lost. So did I. But not for the reason Adrien probably thought. Because what he lost wasn't a ring. It was someone willing to keep proving she was enough. And I was never going to do that again. By the 5th day, the silence started doing something interesting. Not to me. To him. I heard about it secondhand. Mutual friends sending vague check-in texts that were really just fishing for details. Hey, just making sure you're okay. Translation. Adrien is spiraling, and we don't know which version of the story is real anymore. Apparently, he tried several versions. First, it was that I had overreacted and stormed off over nothing. Then it became that I panicked about commitment. By the weekend, the story had evolved into something almost impressive in its creativity. Lily couldn't handle being pushed to grow. Grow, that word used to scare me. Now it just annoyed me. Friday night, his mother called again. This time she sounded more exhausted than upset. He won't stop talking about the ring, she said. How embarrassed he is. How everyone saw it, and now it's gone. Has he mentioned the marriage at all? I asked. There was a pause. No, she admitted quietly. Just the ring. That told me everything. He wasn't grieving a future. He was grieving a downgrade in status. The engagement photos he had already started planning in his head. The comments he thought he'd be collecting. The version of the story where he got to be admired, envied, affirmed. If you loved him, his mother said after a moment, he says you would have tried harder. That people who want a real future rise to the occasion. I thought about all the occasions I had already risen to. The money I saved, the patience I gave. The way I had swallowed my own discomfort over and over to protect the relationship from tension he created. I did try, I said, just not the way he wanted. That night, Adrien tried a different approach. A message came through on my work email. Subject line. This didn't have to be like this. I opened it. It was long, emotional in the way some people are emotional when they want the appearance of vulnerability without the inconvenience of responsibility. He said he felt abandoned, punished, blindsided. He said the ring conversation had just been feedback, and that healthy relationships require adjustment. The last line said, if you come back, we can start fresh. Do it right this time. I closed the email and didn't reply. That wasn't an olive branch. It was a revised set of terms, and I was done signing contracts I had never agreed to. Saturday morning, my doorbell rang. Not a knock, not a polite tap. A long, impatient press, held just long enough to communicate entitlement. I already knew it was him. I sat on the edge of my bed and waited while it rang again. Then his voice came through the door, sharp and controlled. Lily, I know you're in there. I stayed silent. He tried the handle. Locked. You're really doing this? He called louder. After everything I've invested in us? That sentence almost made me stand up out of habit. Almost. I'm not here to fight, he continued, which was obviously a lie. I just want my things. You can't keep my ring like this. That's insane. My ring. Not our engagement. Not our future. Not what it symbolized. Just the object. I finally spoke through the door. I returned it. Silence. Then, what do you mean you returned it? I returned both of them. His voice jumped an octave. You what? I could picture his face without seeing it. Eyes wide, mouth open, already calculating fallout instead of meaning. You didn't have the right, he snapped. That ring was mine. No, I said calmly. It was conditional. You made that clear. He laughed then, short and sharp and humorless. Oh my God, you're being petty because I wanted something better. Wanting something better is fine, I said. Treating me like a placeholder until I meet your price isn't. His tone changed then. Cooler, harder, more dangerous. Do you have any idea how stupid this makes you look? That one landed. Not because it hurt, but because it revealed the center of everything. Image. Always image. I'm not opening the door, I said. You should go. He stood there for another second and then said quietly, You'll regret this. I waited until his footsteps disappeared down the hall before I moved. For the first time since the proposal, I felt something close to relief. Because once someone shows you they value appearances more than partnership, the hardest part isn't leaving. It's staying long enough to pretend you don't see it. After that morning at the door, I assumed the situation would finally settle down. I underestimated how difficult it is for someone like Adrien to accept losing control of the narrative. By Sunday afternoon, my phone started buzzing again, but this time it wasn't him. It was people around him. Friends I hadn't spoken to in months suddenly checking in. A cousin asking if I was okay. One of the bridesmaids Adrien had already picked for a wedding that was now imaginary texting me, "Hey, Adrien's really not doing well. Maybe you should talk to him." That was when I realized what he was doing. Damage control. Apparently the story had already evolved again. According to the newest version, the proposal had been rushed. Adrien had simply been trying to guide me towards something more aligned with his standards, and I had panicked instead of rising to the occasion. It was impressive, honestly. The way he could rewrite events so quickly. The part he never mentioned, of course, was the ultimatum, the eye roll, the way love had been framed like a product that needed upgrading. Late that night, his mother called again. "I'm not calling to pressure you," she said immediately. "I promise." I believed her. "She's staying with me now," she continued. "Is she?" I asked before catching myself. "Adrien," she corrected softly, exhausted. "I keep slipping. He's been pacing around the house for 2 days." I waited. "He keeps saying you'll come back once you calm down," she said. "That this is just pride." That word again. Pride, used like a flaw. "I'm calm," I said. That's the problem." There was a quiet moment on the phone before she said something I hadn't expected. "He did this with his last boyfriend, too." I sat up straighter. "What do you mean?" "He talked about proposing," she said quietly. Adrien told him the ring wasn't what he pictured. The man tried to save more money, took on extra work. I didn't say anything. By the time he proposed again, she continued, Adrien said the moment felt forced. "What happened to him?" "He left," she said. And Adrien told everyone he couldn't handle expectations. The pattern clicked into place so neatly it almost made me laugh. Adrien didn't want a partner. He wanted a performance. A cycle where someone proved their love again and again, while he adjusted the standards upward each time. "I think he thought you'd try harder than the others," his mother said quietly. That might have been the most honest thing anyone had said so far. "I'm not trying at all anymore," I replied. "That's the difference." We hung up not long after that. I lay there staring at the ceiling, realizing something that was both unsettling and freeing. If I had bought a bigger ring, the next demand would have been bigger too. A better proposal, a bigger wedding, a more impressive partner, and even then it probably wouldn't have been enough. For the first time, I felt grateful the truth came out before a wedding ever happened. By the next week, everything went quiet. Adrien stopped showing up at my building. The calls stopped. The emails stopped. According to his mother, he had entered what she called his reset phase, the part where he rewrites the story until he becomes comfortable with it again. I felt nothing. That surprised me. I expected anger, regret, maybe loneliness. Instead, I noticed small things. How peaceful my mornings were. How I didn't brace myself before checking my phone. How my apartment felt like mine again instead of a showroom where I kept failing to upgrade. Then one evening, his mother called again. This time her voice was steady. "He asked me something today," she said. "What?" "He asked why you didn't argue." I frowned slightly. "Not why you left," she clarified. "Why you didn't fight him about it." I smiled faintly. "Because the moment someone turns love into a condition," I said, "the conversation is already over." There was a long breath on the other end. "I wish he understood that sooner," she said. Me too. Apparently, Adrien had spent the past 2 days replaying the moment on the couch. The sentence, the ultimatum, the confidence he had when he said it, the assumption that I would comply. "He thought you'd prove him right," his mother admitted, "that you'd try harder." That assumption had been the foundation of our relationship, and the reason it ended. "I hope he finds what he's looking for," I said. "I just know it isn't me." Before hanging up, his mother added one last quiet observation. "He keeps asking if you already bought another ring." I closed my eyes for a moment. Not if I was seeing someone else. Not if I stopped loving him. Just the ring. "He still thinks that's what this was about," she said. I nodded even though she couldn't see it. It never is. After the call ended, I put my phone down and looked around my apartment. Quiet. Simple. Mine. No expectations to upgrade. No conditions attached to affection. Adrien had told me to propose again, but only if the ring was bigger. I told him I understood, and for the first time in years I actually did.